When my son told me I wouldn't be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled, got in my car, and made one phone call. By New Year's, their mortgage payments were history, and that was just the beginning. You won't believe what happened next. My name is Caleb Rodriguez, and I'm 62 years old. This story starts on a cold December afternoon when everything I thought I knew about family came crashing down. I was sitting on Preston's leather couch, the one I helped him buy when Kendall decided their old furniture wasn't sophisticated enough. "I could make my famous enchiladas this year," I said, settling deeper into the cushions. "The ones with your mother's secret sauce recipe. Remember how Savannah always said they were better than her grandmother's?" The words hung in the warm air between us, mixing with the scent of Kendall's expensive candles. Preston shifted beside me, his wedding ring catching the light from their 12-foot Christmas tree. Something in his posture changed, shoulders pulling inward like he was bracing for impact. "Dad, unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome?" Preston couldn't meet my eyes, his gaze fixed on the marble coffee table I'd helped him pick out last spring when Kendall decided their old one wasn't elegant enough. "Kendall's parents are coming, and they prefer if you weren't here." My hands went cold. "They prefer. It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about traditions. They have their own way of doing things." His voice got smaller with each word, like he was shrinking inside himself. I looked around the living room at the silk curtains I'd paid for when Kendall complained about privacy, at the hardwood floors that had come from my second mortgage, at the crown molding that had maxed out my credit card. Every inch of this house bore my fingerprints, my sacrifice, my love for my son. "Their own way," I repeated slowly. "And what way is that, Preston?" He flinched. "Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Through the kitchen archway, I could see Kendall's new stand mixer, the professional grade one she'd insisted she needed for her baking phase that lasted exactly 3 weeks. $1,800 of my money sitting there, probably used twice since October. Where will I spend Christmas then? The question came out quieter than I intended. Preston's face crumbled. "Maybe you could visit Aunt Tessa, or we could do something the weekend after." The weekend after. Like Christmas was just another appointment that could be rescheduled for convenience. I stood up, my knees protesting after 8 years of carrying this burden alone. "I see. Dad, wait." But I was already moving toward the door, past the family photos where my face grew smaller and more distant in each frame, past the coat closet that held Kendall's designer jackets. My hand found the doorknob, solid and cold under my palm. "Son," I said, without turning around. "Tell Kendall's parents I said Feliz Navidad." The December air hit my face like a slap as I walked toward my truck. Behind me I heard Preston call my name once, then the soft click of the door closing. Final. Absolute. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, engine off, watching the Christmas lights twinkle in the windows of houses I'd never be welcome in. My phone buzzed, probably Preston wanting to smooth things over with empty promises and guilt. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and drove into the darkness, leaving behind the warm glow of the house I'd bought but would never belong in. The heater hummed against the December cold as I navigated the familiar streets toward home. Spokane sprawled around me, every neighborhood corner holding memories of the man I used to be, the one who believed family meant everything, who'd give his last dollar to see his son smile. That man was a fool. The numbers started rolling through my head like a broken slot machine. $20,600 every month for 5 years. My calculator had given up trying to make sense of it last spring when I'd finally added up the total. $156,000 in mortgage payments alone. Add the $39,000 down payment, the renovations, the furniture, the endless extras. $195,000. More money than Savannah and I had saved for our entire retirement. Gone. Just gone. I pulled into my driveway, the one with the cracked concrete I couldn't afford to fix because every spare dollar disappeared into their perfect suburban fantasy. The porch light flickered, another repair I'd been putting off. Inside, the house felt hollow without Savannah's laughter, without the warmth of family gatherings that would never happen again. My phone rang as I fumbled with my keys, the shrill tone echoing off the empty walls. Kendall's name flashed on the screen. Perfect timing. I'd been waiting 5 years to have this conversation. I answered on the fourth ring. Caleb. Her voice dripped with false sweetness, the same tone she used when asking me to cover their utility bills. I heard about the little misunderstanding with Preston. Misunderstanding? I leaned against my kitchen counter. I don't think there's any misunderstanding, Kendall. You made your position quite clear. Look, I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're very traditional people. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays. A certain atmosphere, I repeated. And what atmosphere is that? A pause. I could hear shopping bags rustling in the background, probably spending money that should have gone to their mortgage payment. Money that was my responsibility, apparently. Well, they're not used to your kind of food. All that spicy Mexican food. And frankly, Caleb, they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, you know. The words hit harder than a physical blow. 5 years of biting my tongue, of swallowing insults for Preston's sake, of pretending not to notice. The way she looked at me like I was hired help. You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight, the enchiladas you said reminded you of your grandmother? That was different. We were grateful then, but now with my parents, now with your parents, you can't have the Mexican contractor embarrassing you at your fancy dinner table. The false sweetness evaporated. Don't be dramatic, Caleb. This isn't about race. It's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. What exactly would you contribute to dinner conversation? Stories about laying tile? Heat flooded my chest, but I kept my voice steady. I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather died. I've employed over 30 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father made in his best year. Money isn't everything, Caleb. Breeding matters. Education matters. And frankly, Savannah understood her place better than you understand yours. The line went dead silent. She'd crossed it. The line I didn't even know existed until she'd stomped across it in her designer heels. What did you say about my wife? I'm just saying she knew how to blend in better. She didn't make waves. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. Savannah had more class in her little finger than your entire bloodline will ever possess. Oh, please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the good sense to stay quiet about it. Kendall. My voice dropped to something I didn't recognize. I want you to listen very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just... We're done, I repeated and ended the call. I set the phone down carefully on the counter, my hands surprisingly steady. Around me, the kitchen felt different, smaller, but somehow cleaner, like a weight had been lifted from the air itself. I walked to my desk in the corner, pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that had bled me dry while they lived like royalty. Time to stop the bleeding. The documents spread across my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. 5 years of bank statements, each one showing the same automatic transfer. $20,600 on the 15th of every month vanishing from my account into theirs. I pulled out my calculator and started adding. The first year, $31,200. The second year, another $31,200. By the third year, I'd stopped buying myself new clothes. The fourth year, I'd started shopping at discount grocery stores. This year, the fifth year, I'd been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch to make ends meet. $156,000 in mortgage payments, not counting the $25,000 down payment from my home equity loan, not counting the $8,000 kitchen renovation when Kendall decided granite countertops were essential, not counting the $6,000 for new furniture that was absolutely necessary for their lifestyle. $195,000, nearly $200,000. Savannah's life insurance money, my retirement savings, the college fund we'd started for grandchildren I'd apparently never be allowed to see. All of it gone. Poured into a house where I wasn't welcome for Christmas dinner. I reached for my phone, scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for my bank. Customer service answered on the third ring. This is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Certainly, sir. I'll need your account number and some verification information. I rattled off the numbers, watched her type in the background. Professional, efficient, no judgment about why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments to what was probably his son's mortgage. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Rodriguez. $2,600 monthly to Wells Fargo. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter. And you want to cancel it effective immediately? I looked around my kitchen at the outdated appliances I couldn't afford to replace, at the walls that needed painting, at the windows that leaked cold air because I'd spent my home improvement money on someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I confirmed. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I said, surprising myself with how good the word felt. No, that's everything. I hung up and sat in the sudden quiet of my house. Outside, December darkness was settling over Spokane. Christmas lights twinkling in windows where families gathered without conditions, without judgment. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Savannah died, I could afford to fix my porch light, buy decent groceries, maybe even take a vacation. I gathered up the bank statements, the mortgage papers, all the evidence of my generosity. Then I walked to my fireplace, struck a match, and watched 5 years of martyrdom turn to ash. The fire felt warm on my face, warmer than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed with a text message, probably Preston wanting to apologize or Kendall needing money for something essential. I didn't check it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. Tonight felt special enough. The next morning arrived crisp and clear. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how much money would disappear from my account in 3 days. The freedom tasted better than the Colombian coffee I'd finally allowed myself to buy. My phone rang at exactly 10:30 a.m. Kendall's name flashed on the screen like a warning label. Caleb. Her voice carried that familiar tone of barely concealed impatience. I need you to pick up my parents from the airport. Their flight from Seattle arrives at 2 o'clock. I set down my mug carefully, watching the steam curl toward the ceiling. Kendall, did you forget about our conversation yesterday? Look, whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters now. My parents need transportation, and you're the only one available during the day. The audacity was breathtaking. Less than 24 hours after telling me I wasn't worthy of sharing Christmas dinner with her family, she expected me to serve as their personal chauffeur. And you're asking me because? Because that's what family does, Caleb. They help each other. Her voice sharpened with irritation. Besides, let's be honest here. You're not exactly busy with important work anymore. So just get in your truck and pick them up. There it was, the final insult wrapped in a command. What airline? Alaska Air Flight 334. They'll be at baggage claim carousel 2. I could hear her nails tapping against something hard. And Caleb, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us. Of course, I said. I'll take care of everything. Good. And wear something decent. Maybe that blue shirt you wore to Preston's graduation. They notice things like that. The line went dead. She hadn't even said thank you. At 2:15 p.m., I was settling into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of coffee and yesterday's newspaper. The crossword puzzle from yesterday lay completed on my coffee table. My phone buzzed against the wooden surface. Kendall's name again. I let it ring. By 3:30, my phone had buzzed 6 times. I'd finished the newspaper, brewed a second pot of coffee, and started organizing my garage. Amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't rushing around serving people who considered you their personal bellhop. The 7th call came at 4:15. This time it was an unknown number. Probably her parents borrowing someone's phone at the airport. I let that one ring too. Outside, a neighbor was hanging Christmas lights on his porch, his children running around the yard with the energy that only December afternoons could bring. Normal families doing normal things. My phone started ringing and didn't stop. Kendall, then the unknown number, then Kendall again. I walked to my kitchen and turned my cell phone completely off. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated up a can of tomato soup. Comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in months because every grocery dollar had gone toward making ends meet while subsidizing their lifestyle. By 6 p.m., someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of aggressive hammering that rattled the frame and announced pure fury. I set down my tea and walked slowly toward the sound, already knowing exactly who I'd find on the other side. I opened the door to find Hudson Pierce's red face inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, pushing past me into my living room without invitation. We waited at that airport for over 3 hours. Paige followed him, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her lips pressed into a thin line of pure hatred. "This is completely unacceptable behavior from someone your age, Caleb. Absolutely barbaric." Kendall brought up the rear, her designer coat wrinkled, her makeup smeared. "You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents had to take a $60 taxi because you decided to get out of my house." My voice cut through their chorus of rage like a blade through silk. They stopped mid-rant, shocked by the steel in my tone. "Excuse me?" Hudson's face went from red to purple. "You don't get to make demands here, buddy. Not after what you pulled today." "This is my house," I said quietly, not moving from my position by the door. "And I want you out. Now." Paige stepped forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Caleb, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections throughout this city. You can't treat people like us this way and expect—" "This was a lesson for you," I interrupted. "A lesson about your excessive arrogance and your poor treatment of people you consider beneath you." "A lesson?" Kendall's mouth fell open. "Who do you think you are to teach anyone anything? You're nobody. I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and taxi service." I stepped aside and held the door open wider. "The lesson is over. You can leave." Hudson jabbed a finger toward my chest but didn't quite dare touch me. "You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. I know people, important people, people who can make your life very difficult. Is that a threat, Mr. Pierce?" "It's a promise." His voice dropped to a menacing whisper. "You'll regret this." Paige nodded, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Indeed, actions have consequences, Caleb, and yours will be quite public." They filed out of my house like a defeated army, but Hudson turned back at the threshold. "You'll regret this," he said. "I guarantee it." I closed the door behind them and turned the deadbolt with a satisfying click. Through the window, I watched them pile into their rental car, still arguing among themselves as they drove away into the December darkness. 3 days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee when I saw my own face staring back at me from page 3 of the Spokane Review. The headline read, "Local man abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday travel." There I was in black and white, an old photo from my company's website. Below it, a story that made my blood run cold and my temper flare in equal measure. Hudson and Paige Pierce, visiting their daughter for Christmas, were left stranded at Spokane International Airport for over 4 hours Sunday when family member Caleb Rodriguez failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. "We couldn't believe someone would just abandon us like that," said Hudson Pierce, a retired banking executive. "At our age, this kind of treatment is dangerous." The article continued with quotes about my pattern of erratic behavior and concerns about my mental state. Hudson had painted himself and Paige as helpless victims of a cruel old man who'd suddenly snapped without provocation. No mention of the Christmas dinner rejection. No context about Kendall's demands or their years of financial exploitation. Just me, the villain who abandoned poor elderly tourists. I set down my coffee and read the article again slowly. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a grudging respect for my opponents. They weren't just entitled trust fund babies throwing tantrums. They were strategic, calculating. They understood that in a small city like Spokane, reputation was everything. They'd declared total war. I pulled out my laptop and began typing names into search engines. Hudson Pierce, Paige Pierce, Kendall Rodriguez, their social media profiles, their connections, their habits, their weaknesses. Everything they'd foolishly made public over the years. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at my wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red. Not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Kendall's Facebook events, they were hosting Christmas dinner for 10 people, Family, friends, neighbors, members of their social circle. The kind of people who read the Spokane Review and formed opinions based on what they saw there. The kind of people who deserve to know the truth. Christmas Eve morning dawned gray and cold. I laid out my evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial. Bank statements organized by year. Each monthly payment of $2,600 highlighted in yellow. Receipts arranged chronologically showing the pattern of my support for their lifestyle. Photos printed from their social media. Kendall's jewelry. Their vacation photos. The expensive Christmas decorations currently adorning the house I'd helped them keep. All of it copied 10 times. One for each dinner guest. The newspaper article went on top of each stack, my red pen notes visible in the margins. Lie written next to Hudson's quotes. False beside the claim about my erratic behavior. Missing context highlighted where they'd failed to mention 5 years of financial support totaling $195,000. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the navy blue one I'd worn to Savannah's funeral, pressed and ready for another kind of farewell. Today I was saying goodbye to the man who'd been a doormat for his family. At 6:30 p.m. I loaded my briefcase with the evidence packets and drove to their neighborhood. Their house glowed with warm light, cars filling the driveway. Through the front windows I could see figures moving around the dining room, Kendall playing hostess in the home my money had helped them buy. I parked across the street and checked my watch. 6:45. Perfect timing. Late enough that everyone would be seated for dinner. Early enough that they'd still be on the main course. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. I let myself in quietly, the warm air hitting my face along with the sounds of laughter and conversation from the dining room. I walked into the dining room carrying my briefcase. 10 faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from surprise to horror. Kendall froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Preston's face went pale. Hudson and Paige looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, setting my briefcase on their marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Kendall found her voice first. "Caleb, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase and pulling out the first stack of papers, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and this lifestyle you've been showing off." A woman I didn't recognize leaned forward with curiosity. "What is he talking about, Kendall?" "He's having some kind of episode," Kendall said quickly. "Preston, call someone." But I was already moving around the table, placing a packet of documents in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support. $156,000 in mortgage payments alone, plus $39,000 in down payment, renovations, and furniture. $195,000 total. Everything you see around you. The room went silent, except for the rustling of papers as 10 people began examining the evidence. I watched their faces change as they absorbed the numbers, the dates, the undeniable proof of my generosity and their deception. "This is outrageous," said an elderly woman in pearls, staring at the bank statements. "Hudson, how could you let your daughter take advantage of this man's generosity, then attack him publicly when he stopped enabling it?" Hudson's carefully maintained facade was crumbling. "You don't understand the full situation." "I understand perfectly," the woman interrupted. "This man has been supporting your family financially while you treated him like hired help, and when he finally said no, you tried to ruin his reputation." I placed copies of the newspaper article on the table. "Mr. Pierce here used his banking connections to plant this story," I continued, tapping the newspaper. "Notice how I'm portrayed as unstable and dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people. But they weren't stranded tourists. They were Kendall's parents coming to the Christmas dinner I'd been banned from attending because I wasn't good enough for their company." The social dynamic in the room was shifting like tectonic plates. I could see it in the guests' faces. The gradual realization that everything they'd been told about tonight's generous hosts was built on lies. Preston spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife knew," I said quietly. "And her parents orchestrated it." Kendall made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. "Everyone, please, this is a family matter that's gotten out of hand." "No," I said, firmly. "This stopped being a family matter when you made it public, when you used the newspaper to attack my character." I looked around the table at faces I didn't recognize, but who now knew exactly who I was. I wanted you all to know the truth. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for. As I walked toward the door, I could hear the eruption beginning behind me. Voices raised in accusation, questions demanding answers, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade falling apart. 3 months later, the foreclosure notice arrived. Preston came to my door, broken and apologetic. We talked for hours about respect, about boundaries, about what it means to be family. I forgave him, but made it clear that our relationship would be rebuilt on new terms. Today, Preston and I have coffee every Sunday. He's learned to value what matters. Kendall moved back to her parents after the divorce. And me? I'm planning a trip to Italy this summer with the money I'm no longer sending to people who didn't appreciate it. Real family, I learned, isn't about blood or obligation. It's about mutual respect and genuine care. Everything else is just expensive theater, and I'm finally done buying tickets to shows where I'm not welcome on stage. The future looks exactly as bright as I choose to make it.